Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Strikes Back. My name is George and you're listening to our review of Deadpool 2 with the boys Connor.
Hello.
Benny.
Hello there.
Guys, we recently revisited Deadpool 1. Now the film that we've been waiting for has dropped. We're here. We're ready. 2018. Benny, you got a plot for us of this film. Can you divulge that?
A little peek behind the curtain. We just came out of Solo, a Star Wars story. I can't really think of anything else right now. We should have recorded that one first, maybe.
We have just come out, which is
what the hell? I wanted to do Solo first.
I also didn't have the chance to go home and change, so I'm in
Oh, you look like shit.
fairly professional attire from.
I'm here for a movie podcast.
Yeah, it's generally how I show up to movie podcasts, just suit.
Alrighty. Deadpool 2, the plot is really hard to talk about because it's quite spoilerful, actually. For reasons that we don't need to get too into, Deadpool finds himself needing to assemble a team, a force, if you will, to fight something I can't remember.
Well,
don't take this as a slide against the film.
Yeah,
I really can't. It's about the jokes, I think. It's not about the plot.
I think the
so
best
much.
way to describe it is that, and this has been, you can tell this from the trailers, Wade Wilson, Deadpool, needs to save a kid from Cable. So he gets a band of
Putting a
merry
team
men
together.
together.
Yeah, that's it. Cable's in this. Now I remember.
Yes. We're firing on all
That's it.
cylinders now.
Solo.
There we go. That's what happened.
Yeah. So, we've got a review of Deadpool up, the first one, which we did. We revisited that, as George said. But do you guys want to give a quick summary of how you felt about the first one and how you're moving into this one?
Yeah, I was. I had the best time revisiting Solo. Holy fuck!
You've already revisited it.
Wow.
It's like 9 p.m. It's
God
well
damn.
past these guys' bedtime.
Yeah, seriously. I had a great time revisiting Deadpool.
A Star Wars story.
A Star Wars story. And I mentioned in our review how much the emotional core of the film surprised me and won me over on that. I think it was the third time I watched the film. Saw it twice in the cinema, and I was mightily excited for Deadpool 2. As I mentioned in that same review, when we kind of got into expectations for this, I was worried that Tim Miller not being on this project, who so amazingly directed Deadpool 1, the fact that he wasn't on this project was a major concern for me.
And not just not on it, but left it under
it wasn't as if he
not the
schedule.
greatest. Yeah, not the greatest of terms, supposedly. But are we doing overall impressions now? Or are we just doing expectations going
You've
in?
done this enough times. I think you should probably.
Overall impressions is that Deadpool is a fantastic sequel for...
I can't believe you just cut to the chase like that.
Wow.
Where's the preamble? Where's the...
It's a fantastic sequel to Deadpool 1. In my opinion, it doesn't hit the same heights, but it's a really great expansion on it. Some really fantastic stuff that they do with the characters and the relationships they establish in the first one. That really works so well and enhances the world. But my major complaint with the film, I guess, is it's just
overall impressions. We can get to that. Like,
I have a few nitpicks.
Yeah,
I have
okay,
a few
cool.
nitpicks, and
Ben?
maybe not as mean as the first one.
Okay.
Solo.
I was gonna tackle you down. Ben, impressions going in, how you felt about Deadpool 1. Overall, brief.
Exactly like George. Loved the first one on this most recent viewing. Really solidified it for me as honestly one of the greats, I think, in terms of the comic book superhero movies. And going into this one, we've talked a lot about the kind of behind the scenes strife that's kind of gone on, and how the trailers though looked amazing, but not as funny maybe as I was hoping they were. And overall impressions were this movie didn't look as great as I expected, but it was not as unfunny as I thought it might be.
Trade-off.
So,
Nice.
Yeah. So it kind of met me in the
Yeah.
middle in both ways. I don't think it's a classic like the original. I think it's a little too slavish to the original in a lot of ways, a lot of sequelitis, but I think it was very solid, and I could happily sit through it again in a big crowded cinema.
For me, I loved the first one. It was that first kind of breaking ground on the R-rated superhero film, at least kind of the more modern standard for it. And I love that. I love that kind of breakaway from the norm. Going into this one, I was fairly excited. I felt like the creative minds behind it that needed to be there were there. So and that's essentially Ryan Reynolds. It's really good when you're watching a project that is genuinely cared about by someone, that they've put the time and effort into making sure that it's a good product and it's made by a fan. I think you can always tell the difference between a film that doesn't have, and I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but Ready Player One just speaks to me as a film that had someone at the helm that didn't care about the properties, as opposed to this, which, or at least the first one, which did. So going into this, I had pretty high expectations, and I ended up enjoying the film. I don't know if I feel like it hit the same heights as the first one, but that's kind of hard to do with any sequel. Like it would have to be a masterpiece to do that. I have a couple nitpicks as well, but ultimately I thought that it kept most of what made the first one great. I think it hit a lot of the emotional chords that the first one hit. I think that it was able to keep the kind of fun nature of the first one as well. And the kind of the humor I thought was really good. But that kind of leads me into the first thing I wanted to talk about with you guys, and it's a nitpick actually. It's a negative.
Yeah, you want to go with negatives first?
Well, I want to go with this first.
Cool.
We can see how we go. But one of the things that I thought really took the juice out of this film was the marketing, because I felt like half the funny shit in this film I had already seen. Maybe not half, but there was a lot of punchlines that I thought really lost their oomph because the amount that had been pushed out.
I disagree, but I think there was a couple jokes where I was like, I loved it in the trailer, and seeing it again on the screen, I was like, oh yeah.
So I feel like I noticed more stuff that was different than in the trailers, and I never know how to react to that exactly, because when I like a joke,
did they do a lot of that kind of stuff in this?
There was definitely like your bullets,
like
your bullets are really fast was complete. That was a big punchline in one of the trailers.
Yeah,
that was different. I can't remember too many that were like verbatim from the trailer that I was like, I've already seen this.
I was laughing a lot in this movie. I really enjoyed the humor. I think they did what they did in Deadpool 1 and just kind of ran the course again. Like rinse and repeat in a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, yeah. It was
in a lot of ways.
They relied on the kind of the wit and humor of Ryan Reynolds, which, I mean, if you found it funny in the first one, you'll probably find it funny in this one too. I mean, there's, don't try and fix it if it ain't broken type thing. There were some other kind of shock gags that they went with this one. They had to kind of up the ante because, this is a sequel. You can't just rely on it being R-rated. So I think they kind of stepped it up a notch.
The first one's mainstream success did not deter them from keeping it violent.
Oh, very, yeah.
Violent.
And kind of fairly mature as well.
Immature.
Immature, yeah. There were some...
What about? I want to talk about some positives with this first, because I think we're going straight for the negative. I want to kind of celebrate the wins of this film.
I mean, you can whatever you want to bring up.
Because
go for it.
I think they had a really tough task with this. You know,
I feel like we're shitting on this just because the expectations are so
Exactly.
high. It's following such a
iconic film.
Yeah.
It's really cemented itself.
So you have to understand, like, when we're talking about it negatively, it's just it's those nitpicks. I can't stress, I really enjoyed this film. I had a lot of fun in this film.
I think
my expectations weren't that high.
So for me,
no, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
A big win for this is the casting. I think all the new characters that came on board, which includes Cable, Domino, all the other X-Force members that are in
Bedlam, Zeitgeist.
I think there was.
Peter.
I really think the casting was great. I think Josh Brolin in particular. And I have some nitpicks with that character and whatnot, but he really sold it with what we had to work with. And I really enjoyed Cable.
Josh Brolin
and Domino. Those two characters, I really enjoyed them.
Cable is a really kind of a stoic figure. So I think that Josh didn't... Josh, me and my buddy Josh, Brolin didn't really have a lot to kind of work with.
They didn't.
Is my feeling. Like, just the way that the character's set up, and he did what he needed to do. I felt like that was really well executed. But I don't think he could have done anything more.
Yeah, I specifically said casting in that because I think the script for those characters is weak, and I don't think they had enough to work with. Yes, they had their moments, had those chances to really be that character. But I wanted more. I wanted more from Cable. I wanted more from Domino. I needed more.
I feel like this movie it had like 3 or 4 different stories stuffed together, and I don't think anyone got their due as much as they could have with something
Apart
a little
from
more
Ryan
pared
Reynolds.
back. I don't know, because there was a lot going on in this movie, and anyone who's seen the trailers, you get the sense that there's a few different versions of this story or movie. But I think Brolin did a great job with what he had, which isn't a huge role. I would have liked to see a version of this movie that was more just Deadpool and Cable.
I
Me too.
understand
Me
why
too.
they did the
Yeah.
reshoots, because they had a version of this film that didn't have as much Cable, and I believe one of the other
Domino.
X-Force. Domino, was it? Yeah.
Mm.
Who people wanted to see more of those characters. And if this is what we're getting after they added
Yeah,
stuff,
wow.
I can't imagine how
What would this have even been?
yeah. I don't want to say scarce because they were in it. Like, I'm not saying that they weren't, but I feel like I would have liked some more. But maybe that's almost intentional if you think about it, because then we're really keen for the next one. And whether that's X-Force or Deadpool 3, I think they'll definitely have, some of those characters heavily involved, particularly the fan favorites. So
I think another win of this film is the characters that they had from the previous film and bringing them into this one.
Monaco,
Colossus.
whatever her name is,
Vanessa?
Morena Baccarin.
Vanessa. Yeah, I thought she really nailed it. Like, she was really good in the first one. I think she was one of the main carriers of that first one, in terms of giving it some emotional oomph. And I think that she's reprised her role spectacularly well.
Yeah, we can get more into that in spoilers. I think she did. I don't think she was as good as in the first one. I don't think. As I said, let's get into that in spoilers. I don't think she was good as the first one, but I thought Colossus was just so fucking funny in this.
Really?
Colossus, I loved that. I really got on board with this character.
know. I think
Negasonic Teenage
I don't know
Warhead,
if I would've-
wasn't as sold on her. She got a lot less screen time in this.
I think the stuff that I liked about this movie was the stuff that was less focusing on, Negasonic, Colossus, Weasel, Dopinder, all the characters from the first one, that they felt hammed in, Connor, a little to me compared to what felt more like the natural story they were going for.
I agree. I think.
What do you think the natural story was?
This
Well,
the Cable stuff. Like
right,
that's the
yeah.
story that this was meant to be about.
I tend to agree. I didn't find his jokes as funny.
Who?
I mean, he was there
Who?
mostly to be.
Who?
Colossus.
Right.
I found that he was, a lot of his job was to kind of play off Deadpool.
I thought in the first one it was funny how, that was a funny joke. Like they're the only 2 X-Men in the X-Mansion every time he goes there. But then they keep doing that. I'm like, are they the only 2 X-Men in this?
I thought that was hilarious, and they expanded on that joke.
Yeah, I know, but it just
love
felt
that.
a little too many callbacks to jokes from the first one.
Yeah.
There were a
that
lot.
made it feel a little stale.
So I actually liked what they did with Dopeender. Again, we can
Yeah,
talk about that
awesome.
specifically, but I thought he got probably just about as much screen time as his character should have allowed. Like, he's definitely not someone that we should be spending too much time on. And I think that they were pretty scarce with him, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen more of Megasonic Teenage Warhead. Teenage Megasonic Warhead?
Negasonic Teenage Warhead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I got it right. Yeah. There
No,
you
you
go.
did.
Didn't I? The first time?
You said Megasonic.
Yeah, you said mega.
Oh, whatever.
Why would you do that? Why?
What's wrong with you?
You not seen these movies?
Yeah, I thought she was a really good aspect of the first, but
Underutilized in this.
Well, she was in it to the point of like, why is she even in it?
Yes.
Because I really liked Brianna Hildebrand in the role, especially, but she was no need for her to be there.
yeah, I tend to
Although
agree.
the running joke involving her girlfriend was one of my favorite things.
yeah, that was funny.
in the movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know
that was
why.
funny.
It just
that tickled
really
me. That
tickled me, yeah.
genuinely tickled me.
Yeah.
But again, it's generally that they're there just to bounce off Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. Well, since we're rattling off some cast, let's talk about one of the absolute main ones in this, Julian Dennison from Hunt for the Wilder People, who plays the kid that Deadpool's kind of looking after.
And evidently he
How
was
did-
supposed to do an American accent in this originally, and he just couldn't. So
I
they were
was-
like,
I
just
was-
make him Kiwi.
I was waiting for his first line in the movie because I figured they would try and make him American, but luckily they just embraced it because I feel like he was able to give a much more natural performance.
I mean, it's hard for experienced actors to get an accent right. And
Benedict Cumberbatch guy.
Yeah, I take away no points for them, just sticking with the natural accent.
Yeah.
I think
Adds
it's
some
fun.
character, and he clearly looks like a Kiwi.
Well, yeah, that and I mean, like, if you actually think about it, there are other accents than American. Like not every character
No.
has to. That's
In America, even.
Yeah, sometimes I
Doesn't
get
exist,
really
man.
annoyed when characters are just needlessly American. I'm
Oh,
like,
and this harkens
come
back
on.
to the X-Men franchise for a long time. Colossus in the first or the second film, X2.
Oh, is
He's just an American guy.
Mm.
Piotr Rasputin is just some
Yeah.
American dude. Thankfully, they corrected that for the
Yeah.
Deadpool films.
Yeah.
But I thought he was great, Julian Dennison. I thought he was really good in this movie. He had a lot of there was some comedic stuff and a lot of dramatic stuff as well that I thought he
Yeah,
I think he
held
did
quite well.
I think he did a really good job. I don't think he did an outstanding or
yeah.
a great
I wasn't
job.
100% sold on him.
I thought like his arc and everything, I really wanted to go that 10-20% more invested in it. And there
yeah,
was something holding me back. But for what he had to work with and what he had to do in this film and his role, I think he did a pretty damn good job. And I really back that guy. As I've said many times on the podcast, I'm a massive fan of Hunt for the Wilder People. So I want that guy to succeed. But I just don't know. It's not that he wasn't cast well. I just don't think the script had enough in there for him to really make it work.
yeah. It's hard for
100%.
hard for me to tell. I just part of me thinks that this was a role that required a little bit more experience because his character was really one that needed to carry a lot of the weight of the film. His character kind of is involved with the stakes. I mean,
he's up on the fat jokes, Connor. Come on.
yeah. Jesus.
But like
so I
compared,
think
compared to this kid to the Dark Tower kid or something, he did a really
but
fucking
you
good job.
don't compare. Like, don't even say them in the same sentence. That's not fair.
I-
and you're setting the bar so incredibly low.
exactly.
Like any
Child actors
I think
generally
child
do that.
actor is going to be better than that.
I think child actors, the bar is so unbelievably low already. Like,
no, because there's
Dark Tower
good
is
good child actors out there, and
Not-
there's good
not-
performances by children.
There are, but it's a lower ratio. It's a lower percentage.
Yeah, but like so it's
So the
possible.
bar's lower.
It's I'm not around that. I think that you're just intentionally lowering the bar so
I'm
your
just
boy
saying,
can
what
like
I'm
look
saying
better.
is that it could have been so much worse.
Yeah,
The
could have been
kid
better.
actor could have been so terrible.
Could have been better.
This is a really important argument that you guys are having right now.
As always.
Yeah, this is great.
We
I
like
love
to
it.
get into the important stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, look, I liked him in this. I'm not 100% sold.
Can we
on
get to
him.
a figure out of 100 exactly how good his performance was? I think we
74.
should. See,
I'd
I would,
agree
I
with
would say
74.
78. So I
0.6.
0.3.
You know what? Fuck
Fuck
both of
you.
you. I'm
Fuck you.
70, 75. Yeah. So
I want to talk about, I know I've been trying to say, let's talk about the positive stuff, but I'm fuck it, I'm throwing that out the
that
fucking
has
door.
never worked in
Fuck
this
the podcast.
podcast.
Fuck
It's
the
never
door.
gone
Fuck
that way.
out of the door. A massive issue I have with this film, and maybe this is a spoiler thing, I'm not sure, but is what was really successful about Deadpool 1 was that it was very mashed together, like non-linear. You had that one event and then the origin story, and they were kind of intercut. This one is like way more plot focused. Like there's so much more in here. We got to go here, we got to do this. And I don't know if that was always successful. And there was points in the film where I was like, what are we actually doing here? Like where are we heading? What is the goal? And in the final act, I think the final act was a lot weaker than Deadpool 1. And I wanted that sucker to wrap up. I think that's what I was saying before, trim the fat. Deadpool 1 didn't have an ounce of fat on it.
This is not an elegant film at all. I mean, that's why I struggled describing the plot earlier. Like trying to think of like a good guy and a bad guy in this film and like just the through line and the three acts. It's like, what even
happened?
There's a lot going on, yeah.
Yeah, this movie is carried by the characters, not necessarily the plot.
I'd say even the jokes more than the characters.
I would
Yes.
say, yeah.
And the good time vibe that you get from it, not necessarily. I think that this could have been refined. They could have gone a little bit more kind of, I don't want to say simple, but
Strip it back a bit.
yeah.
I think there was too much going on. I think they should have picked one story and stuck with it. And I think this movie, the hit ratio for the jokes is lower than the first one, if only because there's a lot more, maybe. But I find that the first one had so much stronger an emotional core, as you said, George, which is what really held it up for me on this repeat viewing.
And this movie makes a decision quite early on, and I think it's a very detrimental decision to the film. And I really when I was in the cinema, I was like, wow, this is so surprising.
Yeah, I
like
agree.
this is
You
I'm
thought
like
it was detrimental to the
I
film?
thought it was detrimental. I think it was a bad decision.
I think it put the whole movie in a weird starting point.
I was like, at that moment, I was like, holy fuck, like, okay, here we go. Deadpool 2, let's see where we go.
I feel like we're
and I
being way
don't
too obvious with
think-
what we're talking about here. So
yeah,
we should take it easy on it.
I
don't think-
chill out on
spoilers,
the
yeah.
Sure.
spoilers. Yeah, is there anything else that Ben, you mentioned that you didn't think it looked as good as
Yeah, I thought the movie looked about as low budget as the first one, but
Really?
stretching it a little further. Yeah,
I thought that
don't
they
know.
upped the budget massively.
I think it was like, I feel like David Leitch is a really great visual director. I thought the action was very cool, but I thought the seams were showing quite a lot to the same
Really?
extent that the first one did. Whereas I thought since that one was so successful, they would have pumped the budget up a little. And maybe
although
just
they
having like
did
the last thing.
mention that the budget or that the studio hadn't been as forthcoming with the
Yeah.
budget as
Well,
they might have wanted.
I think they
Little
got
joke, yeah.
another 20 million. I think. So
That's
it went
really
from
nothing when you think about
58 to 78.
Considering how much of a bigger movie this is in every way,
you feel it.
I think you can see it, yeah. And I like maybe it's not helping coming out of Infinity War, which is like one of the most flawlessly
Gorgeous, yeah,
created
yeah.
movies. But yeah, like you know,
that's a high bar. If we're going to talk about placing bars,
yeah. But that is the bar at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are say like CGI characters in this movie or something who aren't fully successful, or partially CGI characters, which
Oh yeah, I know exactly
Yeah,
what you're talking about,
doesn't-
and I felt that as well. That
work
kind of
amazingly.
annoyed me because I know that character can be done.
we can't talk about it yet.
Yeah,
I think I'm right in the fact that Tim Miller should have, like, the fact that Tim Miller wasn't on this was a detriment to the film. I don't think that Ryan Reynolds, yes, those guys have the jokes sewn up. They've got the meta thing. They've got all that sewn up. In terms of a guy who really knows how to, streamline a film and make it just so digestible and tight,
See,
I
don't
think
you
Tim
can-
Miller is.
I don't
he
think you
did it
can say
really
that.
successfully.
I don't think you can say that because we have no idea why he left. He might have wanted to do a completely different plot or a completely
I'm purely
different idea.
comparing just directors to Deadpool films. I think Tim Miller did it better. That's basically what I'm saying. And the fact that he wasn't
Yeah.
on this one, I felt like his presence was missing. I really
Again,
do.
I think there's too much variance in it. Like you're talking about a sequel which holds its own set of unique
For
problems.
sure.
I think that the task is that much harder. And so I think that the fact that David Leitch pulled off this movie without kind of completely destroying the franchise, I give him hats off. And I wouldn't go so far as to say that he's better fit for Deadpool than Tim Miller, because Tim Miller had.
You say he's a better fit.
No, I said I wouldn't
you
say
wouldn't.
he's
Right, okay.
a better or a worse fit. Like I don't think you can say that because Tim Miller left the project so early, and I think what makes Deadpool really good remained in this film. So
Not trying to start shit, but I do see your point, George. I agree with that. That it does feel like something's missing that was in the first one, and the obvious thing to say would be Tim Miller's lack of involvement. How do you guys feel about this movie as an action movie, like purely on action terms? Because David Leitch obviously is a huge action director.
I thought it was fantastic. Really loved the action, far more than I loved the action in the first one. I thought if there's anything that it's done better, it's the action.
Yeah, I would say
Some.
I thought
would
it was
say
pretty
some.
good. I don't think it was as strong as Leitch's previous efforts. John Wick and Atomic Blonde.
Like,
yeah.
I was expecting.
I don't think it ever got to those levels.
Yeah, I don't
didn't.
think so
No,
either.
it definitely didn't.
Yeah.
And Atomic Blonde,
shame.
its strength, was in the action. Like, it was so, those corridor scenes, they were so fucking great. I was kind of expecting a little bit of that.
That being said, I'd still pop it up above kind of your average, MCU movie or DC
for
or
sure.
whatever, yeah.
I've got to say, I feel like I've been super negative on this. I feel like I'm just ripping it to shreds. I mean, I tried
Well,
to
it's
try to
hard.
end this with some good stuff, but
When
I
all
feel
the
as
strengths
though-
are the jokes, though, it's kind of hard to just
Yeah, we
recount
could
those
come and
say,
we remind ourselves of jokes and laugh ourselves silly, but that's not really.
There's this as a sequel, as you said, Connor, is fantastic. Like, I think they did a really great job. This could have been a fucking train wreck. Imagine if Deadpool 2 had just been like, what's an example? I don't know, Phantom Menace or something like that,
I think it skimmed by in terms of just.
Kick-Ass 2 would have been the example.
Yeah, Kick-Ass 2, exactly. That's exactly the example.
Yeah.
Yep.
That does make this look a lot better, actually.
the first one kind of just. I don't know. Like I feel like it's almost a mistake, the fact that it worked out. Like it
Oh,
was
it
just,
is, yeah.
it had everything against it. You
Yeah.
know, it wasn't meant to be made. It was an R-rated film when that wasn't really a thing. All of these things, and it just kind of pulled it off. And I feel like this one's kind of done the same thing. Like I feel like there's so much against this film. Like Ryan Reynolds, you know, jokes should be grating by now. You know, the plot should be over bloated and just terrible. And it was a bit over bloated, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it was terrible at all. So I think that this movie has done a really excellent thing, and actually made a really solid, enjoyable sequel to the first one. And I think that's probably about as good before a spoiler review as I can do as a final comment.
Yeah. For my final comments before we get into spoilers, I'm curious to watch this again and see where I'm sitting. But overall, it's a very, very, very solid sequel. Even a great sequel, I would say.
I wanted to watch it again as soon as I'd finished it, because I was like, there's some things I need to digest with this film. Like I want to see them again. I want to see how I feel about them.
Yeah, I think if Deadpool 2 has any weaknesses, it just should have been stripped back a little bit more, and some of the key characters should have been focused on a little bit more. But you know, I'll be picking this up on Blu-ray for sure, and I'll be watching it again.
Yeah, I am keen to see it again. I feel like overall I'd have to call it a disappointment, primarily just after watching Deadpool 1 so recently and having
So you
such
went
a good
into it
time
with low expectations and have still come out disappointed.
Not low expectations, just adjusted expectations, because I didn't find the trailers very funny, and you know, directors
So,
leaving.
you
and stuff.
adjusted them lower.
Not low expectations though. But,
Okay, I see.
Yeah. Because after watching the first one, I was like, "Fuck, I'm actually kind of keen to see if this is any good."
Okay.
I would have to call it a disappointment, unfortunately. But I did have a good time with it mostly. The way I feel about this is the first Deadpool thought it was cool, but it was even cooler. And this one thinks it's cool and is not quite as cool as it thinks it is.
It's an interesting way to put it.
It's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Seems a little more forced.